Welcome to your last lecture for Chapter 18 and this class. So we're going to pick up right where we left off, talking about fertility in organic agriculture. So to have the correct fertility, you have to have way much more planning in organic agriculture than you do conventional, because conventional, I can just take a soil sample, I can send it off to Oklahoma State, they will send me a recommendation back, and that's what I tell Beechner or whoever's going to spread my fertilizer, and that's what they do. But because I can't do that, I have to figure out as an organic grower what I'm going to use. If I'm going to use animal manures, I'm going to use compost, how I'm going to get that compost. If I want to use green manures, I'm going to have to plan a whole year in advance for that. So those are some examples of commonly used fertilizers. But if you're going to use green manures or compost, you have to plan almost a year in advance so that you can have that green manure ready or that compost ready. We also look at minerals that can be inputted in that ground, like rock powders and lime, or different organically based stuff like fish and kelp, and so those are very important too. All right, so here are the differences between organic and conventional. So if you look at organic, has to be obviously naturally processed, has to have the nutrients. They're usually slow releasing, but conventional, it's usually pretty immediate that it will hit the ground running, no pun intended there. But you can buy a slow release fertilizer too there. Has low concentrations in nutrients, very high concentrations in conventional, and it's usually in organic agriculture, usually not more than one application per season, but you can throw on a couple different ones when you're looking at a conventional type system as well. All right, green manure. So we've talked about what they are. So when you're looking at it from an organic standpoint, we have to figure out what legumes will fix nitrogen in that soil and be able to maintain those micro and macronutrients so that crop will grow well and have nutrients throughout the whole growing season. So a lot of organic growers will use red clover or alfalfa to do that. And then we have to figure out the amount of nitrogen that legume is provided so that it will be provided for that next crop as well. All right, livestock manures. This is really important to get these tested before you throw them on your ground, because if it's not organic, they will not. You'll throw away your organic license because it's not organic. So have to make sure that they're tested. We use a lot of different types of manures like chicken, turkey, hog, dairy, beef. They're very, very high in nutrients and in nitrogen, but the application is extremely important. So when you're putting it on your ground, how much, and making sure you have the correct amount. All right, NOP, like we talked about manure, so and compost rules. So we cannot have raw manure unless it's incorporated more than 120 days prior to the harvest of the crop for human consumption. And if that's not the case, then you have to you can't grow organically anymore. Same thing when you're looking at if it's unless it's incorporated more than 90 days prior to the harvest, whose edible portion does not contact the soil. So that's when you really have to be very, very careful with manure, where you're buying it from, where it got tested, what the nutrient percentages are. And so that takes a little bit more planning as well. Compost, though it can be applied anytime, still need to get it tested because it's going to be a lot lower concentration of nutrients. So here's a manure spreader. We're just really throwing it on the ground. Compost, this is controlled decomposition of manure. So I'm sure you all know what a compost looks like. We're just throwing in different types of things like crop residue, bedding, maybe some manure to give us that correct amount of nutrients in there. Very nutrient stable product, but it's a lot lower, and in some cases could be a slow release fertilizer. All right, NOP rules for producing compost have to follow the carbon and nitrogen ratio. So it can be anywhere from 25:1 to 40:1. Then it has to be in the correct temperature. So anywhere from 131 degrees Fahrenheit to 170 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 days. in an in vessel or a static aerated pipe system, or you can maintain that percent or that degrees for 15 days using a windrow composting system. So there's a windrow composting system. When we went to the mushroom farm, this is an example. That's an example of what they would be using for that compost to be used. All right, organic livestock product processes and practices. So if you are raising anything like sheep, dairy, or beef, here are the specific regulations for that. Have to have pasture, because if you're going to grow organically, you're more than likely going to grow them on a grass type of system. They must consume at least 30% of their diets from their pasture. So you can throw in some corn and stuff to fatten them up, but that corn has to be GMO free. It has to be organic, and but 30% of it has to be from the grass. You cannot treat them with any antibiotics or hormones, so you can't treat them for pink eye, can't throw in a hormone or anything like that. And then all feed that, again, is fed to that livestock has to be organically certified. So the corn, whatever the grain, whatever it is, has to be organic.